Hey everyone, welcome to 8th grade topic 3 lesson 2. Thank you for hanging in there with me for lesson 1. I know that was a long lesson. Today will be a lot shorter because we're talking about the same thing, but we're talking about perfect cubes instead of perfect squares. And so it's very similar. It's just instead of squares, we're talking about cubes. So we're going to dive in first to the key concept just to save some time. I apologize for the background noise. The dogs are drinking water as I record this. All right, so just as in yesterday or the day that you watched the lesson 1 video, I do want you to take another page of notes on perfect cubes. Just because it's really helpful to have this reference list in the future. So just like we did the other day, I'm not going to model it for you this time because I think you know what it looks like. But title your page Cubes and Cube Roots, and then go ahead and write your first bullet point of perfect cubes. We're going to jump into them.
2 cubed is the same as 2 to the third power. 2 to the third power is equal to 2 times 2 times 2, or 8.
It's third power, so we do it 3 times.
3 cubed is the same as 3 to the third power. 3 to the third power is equal to 3 times 3 times 3, or 27. 4 cubed is the same as 4 to the third power. 4 to the third power is equal to 4 times 4 times 4, or 64. 'The numbers 8, 27, and 64 are all perfect cubes. Unlike perfect squares, perfect cubes may be negative.
All right, I think that's the end of their video. Great. So we have a list of perfect cubes, and the cool thing about cubes is that you can have negative numbers in your perfect cube list because a negative times a negative is a positive, and then a positive times a negative is a negative. So in this situation, we'd have negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Positive 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. So if you have the cubed root of negative 8, the answer would be negative 2 and only negative 2. And then when you do your, if I could rewind this, I could, but if you had the cubed root of positive 27, the answer is only 3 because it can't be plus or minus 3 because a negative 3 would give you a negative 27. So you have to remember that with cubes, you're not using the plus or minus option. You're just doing the positive version or the negative version. Now let's go ahead and talk about cube roots.
The cube root symbol means the cube root of a number.
You write the little 3 on it.
The cube root of 27 equals 3 because 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27. Unlike square roots, cube roots may be negative. The cube root of negative 27 equals negative 3 because negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 equals negative 27.
All right. So this little cute 3 outside of this radical sign, that's what the square root sign is called, is symbolizing that we're taking the cubed root of the number instead of the square root. If you don't have a number outside of the radical, that just means it's a normal square root. But you can see the cubed root or the 4th root or the 5th root sometimes when you get into higher grade levels. But for 8th grade, we're just focusing on square roots and cube roots. Make sure you're taking these notes, and then just like before, we're going to draw this diagram.
Cube and cube root are inverse operations. For example, 3 cubed is 27, so the cube root of 27 equals 3.
And now,
the same is true of negative
sorry.
numbers. Negative 3 cubed is negative 27, So the cube root of negative 27 equals negative 3.
So now we're going to use that information to solve equations. And it's going to be just like last time, except instead of taking the square root, we're taking the cube root.
For example, solve x cubed equals 125. Then, take the cube root of each side of the equation. Simplify the cube roots. The cube root of 125 is 5. Write the solution. The solution is 5. Now, check the solution. Five cubed is 125, so the solution checks.
Great. So I wanted to make sure they weren't doing another example with negatives here. So in our example, we were just doing the inverse operation, the opposite not an exponent, the opposite of a variable cubed is taking the cubed root. So they took the cubed root to both sides because that's the rule about equations. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And then when you took the cube root of 125, you got 5. I'm going to pull up a list real fast. I just realized I forgot to do this. Perfect cubes list. Let's see if I can get a good picture here. Perfect cubes. This one looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and take a look at these. Perfect cubes. If you want to pause the video, write this down, maybe take a picture of this screen right here. We've got perfect cubes here. So the perfect cube of 1 is 1, because 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 8, the perfect cube is 2, or I'm sorry, the perfect cube of 2 is 8. Here's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So these are the numbers 1 through 10. These numbers, I'm actually just going to take a screenshot and put them in our notepad for today. Here we go. And I'm only taking the positive side because I know I can get the negative side just by making those numbers negative. So I'm just going to take the positive side. And then I would recommend that you write these down in your math journal so that way you have them for future reference, because these ones are they're a lot trickier to remember, like what the cube root is. It's not as easy. We don't use them as much in math. So these numbers are a little more bizarre, but they're still important to remember and be familiar with. All right, so we're already doing so much better on time this one. I think we'll get this done in one video, which is great. Let's go ahead and do part 1 together. All right, I'm going to grab these and pull them into our notes. All right, let's get this finished. Okay, so the x cubed equals 8. Well, to undo a cubed, we have to take the cubed root. When you're showing your work, make sure that you write that you're taking the cubed root of something, because taking the square root of something won't help you all the way in this situation. So we're taking the cubed root, so that means the cubed root of x cubed is just x, and the cubed root of 8 is 2, right here. Remember, we can't do plus or minus, so the answer is just x equals 2. All right, the cubed root on both sides to undo that x to the third. We'll do the cubed root over here. We have a negative 27. So that means we're at an x equals negative 3. 64 is always the one that tricks the most people because 64 is both a perfect cube and a perfect square. So don't accidentally write 8. Your brain sometimes likes to automatically think that it's 8, but don't fall for it. So the cubed root of x cubed and the cubed root of 64 is 4. And the cubed root of negative 125 is, negative 5. All right, so we've got 2, -3, 4, and -5 as our answers. It is time for you to try this one in your book. Go ahead and try -64. What's the cubed root of -64? Hopefully you said y equals -4 as your answer. Here's the directions if you need to take a look. Otherwise, we are jumping right into part 2. Here we are in part 2. I warned you we're going to go a lot faster in this one, so please feel free to pause the video and go back if you need to rewatch a portion of the video. Just like before, they're now going to give us an example with a fraction. So I'm going to go ahead and take this. Remember how we did this with our square roots? We're going to do the same rule, the same procedure with our cube roots. So remember, to undo w to the 3rd power, we have to take the cubed root of this, which means we have to take the cubed root of this fraction. Don't panic when you see the fraction. You just take the cubed root of 8 and the cubed root of 343. And 343 is one of those odd numbers that I don't have memorized. I think it's 7 is the root, but I'm not sure. All right, so the cubed root of 8 is 2. And the cubed root of 343, if we look at our chart, yep, is 7. Is 7. So our answer is 2/7, and it's only positive because this one is a positive. The number under the radical is positive. So 2/7 is our answer. Your turn to try it. Oh, this one's super simple. Y to the 3rd equals 1/1000. See if you can try this one. If you're ready, I'll pull up the solution. If not, go ahead and pause that video. Well, the cubed root of 1/1000, the cubed root of 1 is 1. The cubed root of 1000 is 10. So 1/10 is your answer. And you can check it by going 1/10 times 1/10 times 1/10, which will give you 1/1000th. Great job, everybody. We are, believe it or not, approaching part 3, which last lesson we had to skip because it was not a perfect square. If this is not a perfect cube, I am also going to skip it, which you can do on your homework as well, because I don't want you to worry about estimating cubes until later on in this lesson. So, or later on in this year. So let me check. I don't think 1256 is a perfect cube. Let's check. 1, 2, 5, 6. Perfect cube. Nope, it's not. So you have 2 options when you get homework questions like this. If it's not a perfect cube, go ahead and just use a calculator for now. That's what I want you to do. So 684, for example, is not a perfect cube. So go ahead and just type in 684 and take the cubed root. And later on in this year, we will learn how to estimate cubes and non-perfect cubes and non-perfect squares. And we'll dive into that a lot more in detail later. So for now, just go ahead and use a calculator for these types of problems and call it a day with that, which means that we are now finished and ready to go on to our close and check. So for your close and check today, it's probably going to be the same where you skip the ones that aren't perfect, unless you want to use a calculator. Let me just pull that up. All right, so number 1 is good, number 2 is good, 3 and 4 you can do if you use a calculator, and then 5 is great. Remember, 5 is just asking you what the salesperson did that was a mistake. And cube critical positive or be negative. You can do 6 if you'd like to do 6. We have enough time. So I will go ahead and leave this up here for 5 seconds and then pull up the answer key. All right, here are the solutions. Feel free to check your work, pause the video where you need to. Check your work, and then have a great rest of your day, everybody.